Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's always a great honor to stand in this chamber to discuss such an important piece of legislation. But before I dive right into the Jail Not Bail Act, I'd like to take a moment to reflect and thank our veterans, those who have served, who have paid the ultimate sacrifice, and those brave men and women who continue to serve today for the freedoms that we have and we enjoy, even in this chamber, to have healthy debates, to have healthy discussions, to make sure Canada always remains a true, strong democracy. And I encourage all members of the public that on Remembrance Day, please wear a poppy. That's the least we can do. It is not a political symbol. It is an important task to honor those that have done so much for our freedoms. And it's always an honor to rise to speak to the Jail Not Bail Act. I want to first start off by thanking so many individuals that have come together to make this piece of legislation possible. I want to thank all those from different political parties, from various levels of government, who shared their expertise, municipal leaders, mayors, local councillors, MLAs, our first responders, from those that risk their lives every single day, run to emergencies, whether they're police officers, firefighters, paramedics, and others. Their input has been greatly valuable to me. Crown attorneys, those that apply the law to defend the rights of Canadians, many of them from Oxford County who shared their expertise with me when it comes to this bill, and also the victims. I think it's very important for us to understand that the bill, it puts the rights of victims first, because at the end of the day, in our justice system, they should be the fundamental centerpiece of our system. From locally, from Oxford County, I want to do a special thank you to our Mayor, Jerry Atgioni from Woodstock. We have our Woodstock Police Chiefs from the Woodstock Police Services and some of their members who have helped me table this bill. But also various police associations from right across the country who were part of the consultations, who also put in letters of support for our bill. In terms of community organizations, we have Kate Alexander, who is the founder of End Violence Everywhere, the One by One movement, the Oaks Revitalization movement, Megan Walker, Debbie Henderson, C. Trang, Scott Weller, Chrissy Jennings, and countless other victims and advocates who have shared their stories, Mr. Speaker, who have shared their heartbreaking stories, and who have asked us to bring this legislation forward so that Canadians can have safe streets again. And those safe streets are not something, that is so far from us to reach. If you think about it, just think of a world. Just think of a world where our kids could play on the streets, our seniors could go for a coffee with their friends, talk about the good old days, when the parents could drop their kids off at school and not worry about their safety. A country where we had vibrant communities, where we weren't watching over our backs, where law enforcement were motivated, where they had the support of this chamber, but also the criminal code, where they knew if they did their job after risking their lives, that they would have somebody that backed them up to keep repeat violent offenders. Again, it doesn't seem like something out of a fantasy. We used to have this. We had this in Canada. We had safe streets. But when this Liberal government took office, they brought in legislation that has disrupted our country, but has moved out of balance the rights of victims and prioritized the rights of criminals. We saw that with Bill C-75, when they brought in the principle of restraint. And I'll talk a bit more about that later on in my remarks. But that principle literally told judges that they have to release the accused at the earliest opportunity on the least restrictive conditions. They brought in bills like C-5, which took away mandatory minimum sentencing, which allowed for house arrest for some of the most violent crimes that are happening in our community. And my colleagues and I have been touring and meeting with stakeholders right across our country. We have gone coast to coast to coast, from Yukon all the way out to the East Coast. We've met with families, we met with victims, and their stories are what's at the heart of this Jail Not Bail Act. It is their stories that have motivated us to put forward a piece of legislation that after so many years the Liberals ignored this file. And I want to share a story that I've shared in the past in this chamber, and I know the Minister of Justice has also met this family, so I do want to thank her for that. Bailey McCourt. Bailey McCourt, as many of you know, was killed by her ex-partner, who was released on bail just 3 hours after he was released. He found her 4 kilometers away, took a hammer, and smashed her head in a public parking lot. Now, her life is gone. She is gone. She is no longer with us today. I spoke to the stranger who held her hand at that very moment. His life is now affected by this as well. He can't believe what happened that day, and he has lost faith in our system. But when Debbie Henderson and Bailey's stepmom came to Ottawa just last week to testify at committee, she shares some more stories with us. See, Bailey was a mother, a caring mother. And when her friends and family held a celebration of life for Bailey, her kids thought that it was a party for the mom, that she'll be coming back home. They still think she's alive. The kids that still believe today that her mom is coming back to them. And all those celebrations are just for mom. And what was hard was that crime shows you that it's not just the lives that you lose directly, it's the effect that it has on everyone else. On everyone else. From the immediate family, to neighbors, to strangers just walking down the street, to a whole community, and to our country. Because Bailey could have been any one of us. She did everything right. But the system failed her. And we had the same problem in Peel. When I was there for a town hall, Flo and Paul Henderson shared their daughter's story. Very similar to what happened to Bailey. Their daughter, Darian, was being attacked again by her former partner. He was charged, he was arrested, but he was released, Mr. Speaker, 5 times. 5 times. And on the 5th time, he took a gun and shot and killed Darian. Wow. When we're at this town halls, Mr. Speaker, we should look in the eyes of these parents. We should see the pain in their eyes, the tears that flow down their cheeks, the strength they show in sharing their story is not because they know that Dale will come back. It's because they're pleading. They're pleading for help. They don't want to see another daughter to be shot by a repeat offender. We're all, I'm sure there's many parents in this household. That could affect any one of our kids. When it comes to extortion, we've seen a massive rise right across our country. In Edmonton last year, there was a massive extortion case where they burnt down some developments, shots were fired. The police did their job. They arrested the individual, someone who was charged for such magnitude of carnage. They arrested him. They brought him before a judge, and thanks to liberal bail, he was released. As soon as he was released, guess what he did? He packed his bag, took a flight, and left the country. That's how easy it is for criminals to operate in our community. And the liberal bail laws have had no deterrence. They've invited this chaos to our country. And I know they brought forward Bill C-14. I do want to give them credit for one thing, that they finally have admitted that their policies, that their failure to act has caused this crime wave. It was in their own government news release that under their watch, there has been a massive spike of violent crime in our community. So I do give them credit for that. And look, Conservatives will always welcome any changes to the criminal code that protect families. So it might be a step in the right direction, but I can tell you, it's not going to fix the problem. they're putting Band-Aids on gunshot wounds. You have to fix and treat the wound. You have to make significant changes to the system. You just can't do photo ops and hope that the problem is going to go away. And that is why our plan, the Jail Not Bail Act, is focused on making systematic changes to their liberal bail laws. First, the principle of restraint I spoke about earlier today. The principle that allows repeat violent offenders to be released on the least restrictive conditions at the earliest opportunity has to be removed completely. It has to be gone. You know, the Liberals in their bill are tinkering with it, are adding some exceptions to the rule, but it still exists. It is still their fundamental primary consideration when it comes to bail. When I was sitting in bail court watching proceedings to research for my bill, I sat up for about 15 hours. Justice of Peaces were quoting the principle of restraint and releasing. Not one person was denied bail for being a repeat violent offender in that time I was watching that court. Not one person. My Jail Not Bail Act will repeal the principle of restraint and will introduce a principle of public safety as the primary consideration. And this is where they did some copy and pasting, and I do admire that. I think sometimes imitation is a great way to know that you're doing something right. We're introducing something called a new major offenses category. This would categorize some of the most extreme violent offenses that we have seen in our community, from violent shootings, home invasions, violent carjackings, extortions, human trafficking, drug trafficking, but also when someone attacks a first responder, irrespective if they're a police officer, a firefighter, or a paramedic, that should be a serious offense requiring serious look when it comes to bail. And we'll make it reverse onus. We'll make sure that it's on them to ensure that they have to justify to a judge or a justice of peace or a peace officer why they should be released, not the other way around. Furthermore, we're going to be tightening the risk assessment standard when it comes to bail. Right now, the Liberals allow for, when it comes to assessing risk, that is there a substantial likelihood to reoffend. My bill will be lowering that threshold to look at reasonable foreseeability. Would a reasonable person believe that this accused person, based on their history and prior bail conditions, would be likely to reoffend? That change would lower the threshold. It would provide objective clarity to the test as well. We'll also make it mandatory in the criminal code for judges to look at someone's criminal history. We don't see that right now. So we're going to be codifying that aspect. We'll also be making it tougher for repeat violent offenders, going after recidivism. So if somebody has been convicted in the last 10 years for one of the major offenses, has been charged again and is out on a third time and commits another offense, they shouldn't be getting bail unless a superior court judge looks at their file. We're also going to be collapsing bail post-sentencing for indictable offenses. Bailey McCord's killer was found guilty. He was guilty in the eyes of the law. He shouldn't have been out on the streets. So next time somebody is found guilty of an indictable offense, they should not be released on bail until someone else looks at it, not just the regular courts. We will make sure that we don't have criminals that are vouching for other criminals as sureties. Can you believe that? Right now we're in a system where organized criminals could vouch and be sureties for other criminals. That should not happen. So if somebody has been found or is guilty of an indictable offense, they will be removed from being a surety, because I personally believe that you have to be of good standing, order, and good character to vouch for someone else, especially if they're in your care. Also, if you are not a Canadian citizen, you're not a permanent resident but are a temporary resident, You commit an offense and you're being charged, you must surrender your passport. We don't want no more flight risk like we saw what happened in Edmonton. And we'll make sure that there's annual reporting happening to Parliament. The stats aren't there on a national level. We want to make sure there's accountability. Mr. Speaker, safe streets should not be a fantasy in a faraway land. This should be happening here in Canada. The Jail Not Bail Act will lock up repeat violent offenders and restore safe streets in our country once again.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires de l'honorable député de Madawaska.
The Honourable Member for Madawaska-Estigouche. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're proposing amendments to the Criminal Code, but we need to be serious to verify that each of the amendments respect the Constitution, because when we propose unconstitutional measures, it'll be overturned. They'll be overturned later. On this side of the House, we're proposing legislation that does meet expectations in terms of public security and C-14. So if my Conservative colleague's objective is really to improve security, why is he promoting a redundant law instead of moving forward with C-14? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, I want to thank the honourable member for his intervention. Our Jail Not Bail Act is fully constitutionally compliant. These are targeted, reasonable, proportionate measures that we're taking to change the criminal code, going after a small number of folks that are repeat violent offenders. So I am strongly confident that our bill is charter compliant. But speaking of charter compliant, on this side of the House, we stand for the charter rights of victims, of law-abiding Canadians, unlike what we just saw recently from the decision of the Supreme Court, where they're releasing and removing minimum mandatory sentencing for child sexual offenses. And yet this government has stayed quiet. On this side of the House, we'll invoke the notwithstanding clause to ensure that law-abiding Canadians and children are kept safe.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. L'honorable député de...
The Honourable Member for Beauharnois, Salaberry, Soulanges, Huntington. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I understand that this is a very emotional topic when you lose someone who was murdered and then you see the person being out on bail. But the question I would have for my colleague is that he knows, based on facts, that there's a lot of detainees right now who are in prison arbitrarily that are waiting for their court cases. So our prisons are full right now of people who are waiting for a hearing, and there may be a lack of room with the solution that our colleague is proposing. And the question I would ask him is that, would it not be time to modernize the process and all the stages of bail to work on this process very specifically? Thank you.
For Oxford.
And I appreciate the comments, and I do agree. I think there is time for us to modernize our justice system, but I think it's important we modernize our criminal code to defend the rights of law-abiding Canadians. When it comes to our prison capacity, I think it's important for everyone to understand that this bill is targeting repeat violent offenders. Just to share some facts, in Kelowna, the same 15 individuals committed 1,500 crimes in a single year. In Vancouver, the same 40 committed 6,000 crimes in a single year. So if you put away these repeat violent offenders, you're going to have less in and out happening in our criminal justice system. Our job is to make sure we go after those repeat violent offenders. And as always, there's always going to be a presumption of innocence, and we'll let the courts do their work. Thank you.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. The Honourable Member for Caribou, Prince George.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank our honourable colleague for the work that he's done on this. Mr. Speaker, I want to give our honourable colleague another opportunity to talk about something that he mentioned in his intervention. He said that the victims' families, it's too late for their loved ones, but they're not fighting for that. They're fighting for the next family. They do not want another family to go through what they've gone through. And perhaps he can, through you, Mr. Speaker, he can share a further story on that.
The Honourable Member for Oxford.
Mr. Speaker, the stories I think we've all seen. We've seen the headlines in the media. We've seen the social media posts, the cries for help. These headlines seem like they're from Hollywood movies. And families get destroyed. You know, sometimes this person that's killed is the only income earner. Sometimes it's the only person that they have to take care of their kids. You know, these stories are not just stories that we want to share. It's the feelings and the emotion that comes with it. I could tell you, Bailey's family's life is completely destroyed. They're not in a good spot right now. Same with the other victims that we see. So I think for us, the purpose of sharing these stories is for us to all wake up, to know that we're in this chamber to keep Canadians safe. That is one of our top priorities, and to make sure that the criminal code reflects those changes. And so I thank all the victims. I thank all the victims who have the courage, who take a stand, and to share their stories, because it's with their stories, with their efforts, when we're all united, we can actually make change happen in our country. Thank you.